So early in my career, I made a big mistake. Now, let me set the scene for just a minute. I was 25. I was fresh out of a master's degree. This was my first full time professional job. And I was pretty sure I knew everything, right? I'm working in a university and I'm working in residence life. So that means that I am the hall director. I'm living in a residence hall with a bunch of college students and helping them figure out college and their living situation and all this kind of stuff. Well, I was in charge of two different residence halls, and the university made a decision that they were going to tear one of those halls down at the end of a semester. They had originally talked about doing it at the end of the year. They changed their minds. They decided they were going to do that in December. But they also made the decision that they were not going to tell the students until just a few weeks before they left in December. Now, I thought that was a terrible idea. I thought that we should tell the students right away. I was very sure that that was the right decision. I voiced my concerns to my supervisor. I voiced my concerns to their supervisor. Both of them were very clear that this was a presidential level decision and they really didn't have a lot of influence. So, my 25-year-old self who knew everything, I just emailed the president, right? Why not? Oops. It was not perhaps a great political decision on my part, right? But here's what happened. This is where we get into the leadership part of it. My direct supervisor called me out on it in a meeting and laughed at me. She was basically like, y'all, you're never going to believe what Carol did. That was a real dumb move. You really shouldn't have done that. What an idiot, right? I felt about this big, right? It felt awful. She made it clear that I had made a mistake, but she also made me feel tiny. She completely broke any connection I had to her. And she just made it very clear that she thought that this was real stupid and in front of a lot of other people. Now, her supervisor, who was the vice president, he called me into his office and I was real nervous because he was known for being pretty tough. And I had already been laughed at by my supervisor. He told me about a mistake that he had made early on in his career. He told me why it was really not a great idea for me to reach out to the president directly. And then he just encouraged me to think a little bit longer next time before acting and maybe run it by somebody who'd been around the system for a little bit longer. I walked out of that meeting with a completely different feeling. I walked out of that meeting feeling like I wasn't alone, like I knew why what I had done was wrong and why I might make a different decision next time. And I walked away knowing that that vice president was on my side. I had a connection with him that I knew that while he was frustrated with my decision, he was on my side in the long term and he wanted me to make better decisions. When we think about these two examples, it is really clear which leader made a connection with me and which one killed the connection. The reality is, both leaders made my mistake very clear. Both leaders held me accountable to what I had done wrong. But the vice president built a connection with me with vulnerability, compassion, trust, stability, and hope that meant that the rest of the time I worked for him, I would do whatever he asked me to do, right? That connection really made me loyal to him and want to do things that he thought needed to be done. It made me trust him in a completely different way. This is why I think connection is the cornerstone of leadership, because when we build that connection, we create a relationship that people want to follow us.